Okay, here we are in chapter 14. We're about in your Think book, so be sure to get the book out and let's look at chapter 14. This is about separation and divorce. And the question to kind of guide you through the chapters is helping us look at long-term trends in divorce, and then a term that I like to use, family fragmentation. What's happening to our families as they are breaking up due to separation and divorce. And then I have some additional information just to kind of give you about how we get divorced these days. It's kind of a new phenomena since the 60s and 70s. Divorce used to be a very difficult way to end a marriage. It's much easier now to do because we've changed the legal system in America. It is a marriage and divorce are state legal arrangements, and so it's different in each state. So I just kind of wanted to show you some information about this. You probably don't know about this. You've probably not been married, and you've probably not been divorced, and so you probably don't know about this. So I wanted to bring you up to speed and kind of show you some information just so you would have it as you explore this and read about this in your chapter. And so when you're going through your chapter, this is what I would do. Again, I'm trying to promote active reading. And so when you're going through and instead of just flipping through the chapter, why don't you try to find some answers to these kinds of questions here? This is a way to kind of give you a mission as you're exploring the chapter. You know, what is the difference between a separation and a divorce? Are they the same thing? Does one come before the other? Do you have to do both of them, or can you do one and not the other? So be sure that you get good, clear definitions of these terms and some examples of what they look like. Most people don't know the current trends about divorce. They think divorce is always on the increase, always climbing, and it's probably not. And so we're always very much pessimistic about divorce. But divorce trends seem to be on the decline, except maybe I've got some other interesting research to show you today that might change our opinion about what's happening with divorce based on the age of the people getting divorced. And then here's another, what's a no-fault divorce. That's what I want to show you what the laws are like we're in Texas here, and so you may be in a different state, and so you need to look up what the no-fault divorce rules are like in your state. And then there are some terms in the chapter, a covenant marriage. There are some risk factors for divorce, so that you can tell, am I getting involved in a risky marriage? Is this thing gonna head for divorce simply because of the risk factors that we're involved in? Bohannon is a researcher, a marriage expert, and so he has kind of spelled out in your chapter how we move through the process of divorce. And then what always interests me are what happens to adults and then, of course, the children in a divorce. Typically, divorces happen early in a marriage, and if there are children, then that means they are young. And oftentimes they experience lots of stress and trauma because their parents' marriages have fallen apart and they don't quite understand what's going on and what's happened. So it's really traumatic for them. Okay, so HBU's in Texas, and so no-fault divorce is our state laws. And so your state, if you're not in Texas, has a different law for granting no-fault divorce. Here's what it is in Texas. It used to be when you were going to get divorced, both parties in the marriage had to go get a lawyer, pay for a lawyer, and they had to demonstrate that somebody was at fault, and they had to have a court case, and it was real expensive and kind of drawn out and traumatic. Well, now we have what's called a no-fault divorce, and so you don't have to get a lawyer. You don't have to pay for that. You can simply fill out some paperwork at the courthouse, and you can be granted a divorce. Well, here's in Texas. Here's the here are the requirements. In Texas, you have to be living, one member of the marriage, the husband or the wife has to be living in the county that you're going to file for the divorce for the preceding 6 months of the preceding 90 days. So you got to be living there. Then you have to wait before the divorce is granted for 60 days. You can't remarry before the 31st day. If you could do that, but you have to get the court, a judge has to waive that rule. You have to, there are grounds for the divorce, the no-fault divorce. I'll show you those in a second. You can be separated for 3 years, and the marriage is unsupportable, is what we say when it's a no-fault divorce. There are other grounds for divorce, and there's a list right there. You see adultery, cruelty, violence, abandonment, et cetera, et cetera. Let me give you this list of no-fault divorce, or the list of why people are granted a divorce. Usually the no-fault divorce law is the number one. We call it insupportability. And so it's not technically no fault, but that's what they record as the no-fault divorce. There are other reasons for divorce in Texas. There they are. You could be living apart. So if you have not been living together for 3 years, then the court could grant you a divorce. If one of the parties in the marriage has been in a mental hospital, you have to go to court and prove, number 4, cruelty. And your lawyer, you have to get a lawyer to prove that the other one spouse is treating the other in a cruel way, and that living together is unsupportable. That living together is just, it's psychologically damaging to you, or physically damaging to you. Physical abuse, psychological abuse, abandonment. You've been away for a year. The spouse has left you. You don't know where they are, and they're gone for a year. That's different from living apart. Living apart, you know where they are. Abandonment means that the person has gone. I don't know where they are, I don't know who they are. They've left. And they've been gone for a year, and I can't find them. I can't track them down. If you've been convicted of felony, number 6, and adultery, you could prove it. Again, you need to have a lawyer to prove adultery. So those are the reasons. The number one, insupportability, is what we use for a no-fault divorce in Texas. Again, depending on where you live, when you're taking this course, your state has its own rules for what we call a no-fault divorce. So you can go look those up online for your state and see what the rules are for those. We just finished this coronavirus, this pandemic, and divorce rates have spiked. I thought this would be interesting to you. We don't know why. Maybe it's because people have been stuck spending too much time with each other. Maybe that's why it's happened. The number of people looking for divorce was 34% higher in March through June compared to that same period of time in 2019. Experts say maybe it's too much stress, maybe unemployment, maybe a financial strain. Maybe somebody has died. Someone else, maybe a parent has died, or someone else has died, and that's added stress to a relationship. Homeschooling kids is very stressful. All kinds of strains on a relationship have happened. 31% of couples have admitted that the lockdown has caused irreparable damage to their relationship. 31% have said that's part of the reason why. So, just coming through this a year and a half of a pandemic and a lockdown, being stuck together and having your normal routine and your relationship has had dramatic changes and shifts, has been related to somehow correlated to higher than normal divorce rates in America. I thought that would be interesting to you as well. Elizabeth Rosner wrote in the New York Post that the uptick could coincide with what she calls a disillusionment phase, which is normal. You know, when you get married to somebody, um, kind of you're all happy and you're all excited and it's this honeymoon phase they used to call it, and maybe the disillusionment phase has hit a lot quicker on people because they've been stuck together a lot longer than normal. You know, normally you would get married, you'd have your honeymoon, and you'd come home and you'd kind of both go off to work maybe, and you wouldn't be around each other all the time. Well, now you're around each other too much, too often, and so maybe the disillusionment phase has happened quicker than normal. So 20% of couples who sought divorce were married within the past 5 months or less. So this isn't just divorce among people who've been married a long time, but 20% were people who just gotten married. And so maybe part of their reason was this disillusionment phase hit too soon, perhaps, because the rate doubled from last year. Who knew? Who knew? Okay, so here's some numbers about the divorce rate for adults 50 and older. This is what's another interesting little number. People who are living longer, and in America, people are living longer. Well, that number. Look at the people who are divorcing, who are between 90 and 2015. Those are people who are 25 to 39. Well, those numbers are declining. People who are 40 to 49, those numbers are slightly increasing. But look at the number for people who are 50 and older. Those are dramatically increasing. What's going on? It's doubled in the past 25 years. People who are older living longer. What is going on with these people? We don't know why, but it's just been dramatically increasing for those people living longer. Maybe because, again, people are living longer and are healthier. That's the part of it, not just living longer, but living longer and healthier, and maybe retiring earlier, and maybe wanting to do something different with their life other than be married. This is some material that's not in your textbook. Again, this is some more information from the Pew Research Center. The national divorce rate is higher now than it was 100 years ago, but it's been declining for the past 2 decades. So during your lifetime, the national divorce rate has been declining. So lots of times people think divorce is always increasing. Well, really, while you've been alive, divorce has been declining. So look at the number of people ages 50 and older who divorced per 1,000 marriages. That's what the chart on the left is. That's the gray divorce. That's what I was showing you in the previous slide. Was about people who are getting divorced who are older. Their divorces are increasing, but overall divorce has been in the decline during your lifetime. The gray divorce is probably happening because people are healthier and deciding they would like to retire earlier and maybe do something different with their life. Maybe that's what's going on. Now, this is kind of controversial because it kind of contradicts um, the statistics about divorce on the decline. Because they're not sure, Kennedy and Ruggles here aren't sure that divorce has really been declining. Because if you look at the light purple color line there on the graph, since 1970, divorce kind of started to increase as we used and began to have no-fault divorce available to us. But then it kind of, in the 80s, it kind of peaked and then it began to decline. Overall, it kind of settled down and then it started to decline in your lifetime. It kind of flattened out. But Kennedy and Ruggles, what they did was they've changed the measure. And so that darker purple line, what they did was they looked at the divorce rates, not of the whole population, but they looked at the divorce rates of older people. What's going on is that people are waiting longer to get married. They're not getting married at the same time as they were getting married in 1970, for instance. They're getting married later in life. And so what that means is that people get married later in life. And so that kind of changes the statistic. And so when they change the statistic, it changes the divorce rate. And so the age standardized divorce rate, which is what Kennedy and Ruggles are using here, has actually risen. And so that's what that darker purple line is it's risen. So they've got 3 measurements that they've taken. So you see that the dotted line, they don't have measurements for those years, but they've got years in 70, they've got years during the 80s and 90s, and then they've got another measurement here in 2010. And so they've discovered, look, the divorce rates really have been increasing. They're going to add to that number those gray divorce rates that we just talked about. But because people are waiting longer to get married, they believe that the divorce rates have actually risen. It's not an average anymore with an unstandardized number because you can't lump everybody into that number because people are waiting to get married longer and later in life. And so it kind of throws the numbers off because you have people in their early 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 who never going to get married weren't getting married in the first place, and they're throwing off the average. Hope that makes sense to you. Anyway, this is really interesting statistic. It's messing up what we're telling students for years and years and years about the divorce rate. I've been telling people this purple, the light purple number. I've been teaching that forever. And now you see this research from Kennedy and Ruggles came out in 2014. And look, it's kind of thrown all the statistics out the window. Maybe divorce rates really are increasing because we're waiting later to get divorced. Very interesting. Because we're waiting later to get divorced. It's these baby boomers, people in my generation, who are getting divorced. People who were born between 1946 and 1964, who are getting divorced. They're the generation who are doing it. That's the age group that's responsible for the extraordinary rise in it. They're now middle-aged people, and their pattern of divorce continues to rise. If you can tell by looking at this, look at the age across the bottom, and their divorce rates are continuing to increase as they go along. So it's older people, not younger people, that are getting divorced. Okay, so that in this slideshow, mostly I've given you all kinds of new information to add to the chapter so that you can, and some of it kind of contradicts this old information about divorce and divorce rates. What I really want to encourage you to do when you look at the chapter is see if you can find answers to these 7 questions in your chapter. And that's the best way to read the chapter, is to go at it with with a purpose, to go at it with a mission. So see if you can find answers to these. Pull your notes out and read the chapter with a purpose. If you have difficulty finding any of this content, if some of it looks contradictory or confusing to you, send me an email right away. Let me see if I can clarify something for you. It's pretty easy, but it's a way to read the chapter with a mission, and it's a better way to learn the chapter than just flipping through it. So see what you can do, see what you can figure out, and if you have any difficulty, send me an email and let me see what I can do. Look for examples, use formal definitions of any terms that you find here in this 1 through 7, and then try to explain it in your own words. And that way you're going to learn it and it's going to make sense to you. Use content that you're learning here. Use additional stuff that I just gave you in the slideshow in your discussion this week as well. Let me know if something is troubling or doesn't make sense. Send me an email, and I look forward to hearing from you this week or later.